everybody. Welcome to Spirit Coffee Talk. We show up every Friday morning with our coffee and we chat all things spirit. So, welcome Elyse and Ginette and myself, Lisa. We are the channelers, mediums, intuitives from Avalon Spirit. So, if this is your first week joining us, welcome. If not, there's many other Fridays that you can tune into here on YouTube and enjoy. Grab your coffee and let's dive in. So, how's everyone feeling this morning?
Tired, actually.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I feel like I was in like some crazy uh race or like non-stop commotion last night while I was sleeping. I even woke up at one
Think it's
point
full
and
moon?
oh yeah, full moon, of course. It is the full, of course. I woke up at one point in the middle of the night and it was almost like I woke up to take a break and then went back in.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I was like, whew, okay, good. I woke up. I'm just in bed. And then I was like, okay, and like dove back in. It's so funny. Totally the full moon.
Totally. I know sleep
Yeah.
patterns are always so messed up around full moon. The energies are so high.
Mhm.
So, yeah. Plus time change here in
Oh,
yeah. Blah, blah.
Yeah.
that's been rough on my body this week.
Usually it's not so bad, but like I'm
Everyone's been
like,
talking about it.
And you know
mhm.
what's interesting? And this might actually be, I mean, maybe not, I don't know. I was going to say, it might be a curious segue into what we were going to talk about, but I've almost like normally spring forward, it's like, oh, you lose the hour, so that kind of sucks because you're kind of catching up all week, but it's so nice because you get the extra sun. And like for some reason, I haven't been enjoying that this week. I just
Mid.
I
Go
just
away,
have the
son.
like darkness and the like I don't know if it's just because I feel so extra tired this time that then when it's late, it's like bright now at 8 o'clock. I'm like, I want to go to sleep. I don't know if it's what it is, but it's like
Yeah.
I know I'll get into it because I'm loving the weather and the warmth, but for some reason that like late night, it's like I'm wishing that it was still dark early because I just want to cocoon at night.
I'm an advocate for like scrapping the time change.
Mm.
Yeah, I would love to not have it
Just
personally.
leave it like this. Because in the fall when we fall back, right, then we're like 2 hours from central. We're like so far from Eastern time. Like, I just don't love that. So I'd like to just join in with this time right now, right? That we're at with spring for the daylight saving and just like cut everything else.
Mm-hmm. Look at this timeline, 3D timeline jumping.
Yeah, way to go, you 3D timeline manipulators. Enough. We've got enough of other timelines to deal with, let alone
If this
Yeah.
actually.
if like
Oh,
timeline change or if time change isn't an example of like how time really isn't real, I don't know what is. Because it's like
oh,
all of
such
a
a good
sudden it's
point.
just an hour later because we decided so.
Yeah.
That's all.
That's very true. That's very true and accurate.
Like,
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
and like to the point where my cousin lives in New Zealand, right? And it's like the same time, but 24 hours or 23 hours different, just like a whole day.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I don't know.
Crazy.
It is crazy.
So
I took a tangent.
no, but let's talk about this manipulation factor because where we wanted to go with it was about like really paying attention to our own resonance, what resonates with you, because there is a lot of distortion based on perspectives in a lot of information coming at us. And I think we're talking a little bit more specifically. I mean, we could talk media distortion, all this kind of stuff, but we're talking like a little bit higher level in terms of different intuitive sources, even your own connections with spirit. Um, Basically, I think the nutshell is if something doesn't feel right, no matter what is being said or shown, pay attention to it.
Yeah, trust yourself,
And
right?
can we say if it doesn't feel right in your heart, in your body, in your spirit, not necessarily the mind? Sometimes they align, but sometimes they don't because fear, our own narrative, our own experiences, our own traumas can have a really beautiful lens over the mind around what feels
Well,
right and what doesn't. But when you drop
totally.
into the heart space, and Jeanette, you often talk about, and I kind of pulled this term from you, like my undercurrent feels steady, even if my brain doesn't like it, and my brain's like, no, don't want to go there, because sometimes the aligned thing is the uncomfortable thing or the scary thing, the change that you
Mhm.
have to make or whatever. And in the mind, you're like, nah, I don't want that, but the heart knows, the body knows, the
Totally.
spirit knows. So it's that like undercurrent. How does that feel? Because I think right now it's sometimes hard for us to discern like what's brain, what's body, what's brain, what's spirit, or my heart, or whatever, because there's so much information coming at us.
Mm-hmm. I
I
agree.
think, yeah, and I think we can use that in so many different levels. Like we're talking, okay, so when you say, Jeanette, when we were talking like on a little bit of a higher level and more of an intuitive sense, like within that, I was listening to a spiritual
Channeler?
Teacher?
channeler, maybe.
Sharer?
She's like a well-known channeler, maybe. I don't know how to use. I want to say influence, like spiritual influencer. I don't know what the hell to call her. Anyway, so in the past she's had like a lot of stuff that has really resonated, and she's quite the following. So it's beautiful to like see different perspective and intuitive things where I'm like, oh my gosh, I got that last week too, and it's like really neat to do that connection. But then there's other times when I like, I'm just using this as an example, but I listened to one of her channels and it just didn't resonate. And that's okay, because I'm not going to say she's wrong or that's not accurate. It's the energetic frequency in which she's in to receive her messages. That's not the energetic frequency I was in. So I didn't resonate with it. It didn't
Mm-hmm.
come through for me that way. And so it can, but you can really use that in a very like 3D way as well, because if you're watching something on TV, let's say the news, mainstream media, or you're looking through your social media, or you're hearing your um, friends talk at book club, whatever, and all of a sudden the information coming in, you're like, this doesn't resonate. Like I can feel it, I can listen to what they're saying, and it can make sense, right? But if it doesn't resonate with you, that is the truth. That is the undercurrent, right? And so you don't, it's not rude to not resonate with something. Even if it's like, no, this is in my history books and I'm reading this. And you're like, that doesn't resonate with me. That's not how it went down, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Trust yourself. Trust yourself. And that's like to the basis of your own intuition, right? And so there's so many different sources of information coming in on all different levels, whether it's from like, ninth dimensional channeling source to, you know your neighborhood gossip, whatever, like there's so many different modes of information coming in. And I think all of us were talking about this is like, use your discernment, really go into your center, your undercurrent, and trust and feel and allow yourself, give yourself full permission to see what resonates,
Mm-hmm.
and let that be your guide.
Yeah. And I want to take that one level higher with spirit specifically and just share part of an experience I had the other day, which
Okay.
again, like, so I was in this meditation and I was connecting. I had my, like, my energy was way open and all this kind of stuff. And I had these spirits come forward that I hadn't necessarily connected with before. They weren't part of my crew or my council, my known, trusted liaison people in spirit, right? Which, I mean, speaks to a whole other tangent of like, get to know your guides and then you can trust them and trust what information comes through. So, anyways, these were new. And they brought through super clarity in their communication of something they were asking of me. And they're like, we're of the light, yada, yada, yada. This is what we are thinking. And I was like, I was listening. And part of me is listening because I'm like, well, I could see that perspective. So I've got my open mindedness. I'm like, I could see that perspective. But then I'm like, my resonance is telling me something is hugely off here, like massively off here. And boy, was I ever so glad to remember the key of resonance. If it doesn't resonate, like, it's a hard no. And
Mm.
as soon as I flipped into the hard no and like honored my resonance, my energy got huge like this. And it just, they were kind of like, poof, right? Like their energy just kind of ceased to exist in my sphere.
Because it couldn't stay within your frequency, right? Because of the,
Couldn't.
yeah.
But their sly factor of how they came through and kind of trying to be of the light or say they're of the light, but then like bring through stuff that I'm just like, I don't think so. It was when I really listened to my resonance that I got my hard no. And so I say all of this because it's so important, not just with 3D people or information we're getting from other sources, but even with spirit. Like I've always said, we need to have boundaries with spirit. If you
Totally.
have your trusted guides, trust them, absolutely. But if you have new energies coming forward that you know, they either look different if you can see them, they sound different if you hear them, or they feel different, be cautious like you would any other new relationship. You take time to get to know them. And any good quality spirit guide or messenger will never rush the time you need to get to know them. They will never push you to do anything, be anything beyond what you are willing to step into, and they will wait. They will have patience.
Right. And even the senses, right? Like as cliche as it sounds, when you're getting to know a new messenger or something, it's like when you ask, are you of the light? Or like I always go straight to like nothing but like the highest Christ consciousness will come through right now, and like holding that space. If it is a density feeling, it's like it doesn't align, right? Like it doesn't fit within the frequency, right?
No,
Or
it's
like
no
energy.
different than when you're like out in the world and you come across somebody and you're just like, oh, no. Like you just
Totally.
have that repelling feeling of like, don't walk towards them. Don't go down that road. Oh, I don't like this energy. Oh, I don't want to talk to you. Like those, we talk about, trust your intuition and trust when you feel like you are unsafe or if there's something that you can't let go of. It's that same feeling of like, something just doesn't feel right. And I think
It
it's
doesn't
such a
resonate.
beautiful like reminder of why we need to continually be reconnecting with our body because our body response doesn't lie. So if something in you is like, I don't like this, it's worth further exploration to say like, okay, what is it that I don't like? Ginette, you
Mm-hmm.
said I had this like weird feeling. Had you just brushed that aside and been like, oh well, but it's spirit, la di da, and they sound really clear and they're presenting really good, so like, well, that's fine. You might have gone down that road or taken them up on something that maybe you wish you wouldn't have. And so it's like always, whether it's 3D, whether it's spirit, whether it's somewhere in between, when that feeling comes up, it's like, there's something that is trying to be said here. So how can I just listen to it? And know
Mm-hmm.
that like two things can be true at once. I really liked what you were saying, Lisa, about like how I have this one person, they really resonate with me. And then she brought something through that didn't resonate. I think in the world, we've kind of gotten into this like black, white, right, wrong. And it's like the collective thinking sometimes is like, okay, well now you're not aligned with that teacher anymore, so don't watch her stuff. And it's like,
Yeah.
but that she could be somebody that I really align with a lot of the time, and this particular message didn't fit for me.
Yeah.
Does that mean we have to cast everything aside? No, you can move forward with that similar discernment.
Or even at this point in time,
Yeah.
right? Because I found myself in my own current frequency to have changed a lot over the last couple weeks. And so where I'm residing, where I'm comfortable in my frequency can be completely different than what somebody else is in a channel or their connection or their like energetic frequency. There is no right or wrong. It's just where you're at,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so if it just doesn't resonate, then that's fine, without judgment. Or and I think that's another thing too, is like we don't have to judge where we're at or where somebody else is at. We don't have to judge whether it resonates or not. Just it as cliche as it sounds, it is what it is. Do you know what I mean? Like if you're comfortable hanging out in a frequency, then that's where you're at.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah.
Like going to your gut, like because everybody has it. So whether people like I don't understand when an energy would come in and I would be able to discern whether or not that's in a frequency that aligns with mine or that's in the same type of frequency. Just you know that might not be as comfortable. Somebody might not be as confident in being able to differentiate. Do you know what I mean? When they're especially when they're getting used to spirit communication or spirit guide communication, you know what I mean? All I can say is that we all have the ability to tune into our own intuition and where that is, like where that steady line is. And so Jeanette, if you are very comfortable with tuning in and being in a fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, whatever dimensional frequency in order to bring through messages, your ability to discern between frequencies is you've got more practice, right? But that doesn't mean that your intuition is stronger than somebody else's intuition. You're just comfortable in that space.
Mhm.
So like I look at, it starts from when humans are born, like little children. You want to see what natural intuition looks like without the convoluted, stereotypes or experiences or fear or programming. They'll be able to look at someone and just like bam, be like, I don't like you,
Mhm.
or I'm not walking in this room. No way. Because their whole system is lighting up. They're telling them their alarms are going off. And so I think if we can get back even into that state of being, into our more natural understanding and knowing of like our yes or no, like what resonates, what's a yes, what's a no, by our bodies, like you're
Mhm.
saying, Elise, our body's ability to react. Then when you get into your more like spiritual awareness and getting to know your spirit guides and bringing in messages, then you're able, because you've had that a little bit more practice with, okay, your check-ins, does this resonate when you are in your frequency that you're comfortable with? Does this message resonate?
Mhm.
Right.
You know what's cool too is like every time that you align with your frequency too, like every time you're presented with a situation where you do consciously stop and figure out, is this in alignment or not? When you do that and then you pick the alignment, the magnitude of your frequency increases every
Mm.
single time, right? Which is why it's like aligning with your, like, what vibrates with you, what's a vibrational match, is not only just like helping you deviate or helping you not deviate from your path, but it's actually amplifying your frequency every time. Because every time you're like, oh, I know that feeling now, I know this feeling now. And so your width or breadth of reach in frequency grows.
I love that.
Yeah, it's very cool. And another thing I want to say too, that the guys keep like pushing through, they're like, say this. I'm like, I will. Is for us to really remember that the amount of polarity we're seeing, um, duality in thoughts, ideas, opinions, but more so the polarity of life on this planet right now, like it's really challenging in many, many, many ways. They're saying one perspective we can put on sometimes is realizing that it is heightening our ability to assess what aligns with us because of all the opportunities to do so.
Mhm.
This is really what awakening is about.
Totally.
Awakening is about consciously choosing, and right now we are completely inundated with opportunities to continually choose what we're going to do with it and what's in alignment. So it's like hyper speed awakening.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to say too, Lisa, you were talking about how like you know we're all going to have different levels of exercise or practice essentially in tuning into our intuition and feeling into rooms. So if it's like, oh, this is a newer thing for you, and you're like, well, how do I do this? One of the it's that same feeling of like when you walk into a room with a bunch of people and like that person seems grumpy. Sure, it could be partially body language and things like that, but if you haven't even engaged with them, it's that being able to tell something in you says like, oh, this person feels grumpy, or this person feels, oh, they seem like they're in a really good mood today. And again, sometimes that is our perception and our, we can see certain things in them, but oftentimes it's a feeling that you have first, and then we kind of find things to support it. But even taking it back from that, it's building awareness in those small kind of um, what's the word I'm looking for, like low pressure opportunities. So walking into a Starbucks and just like taking a moment before you order and being like, what do I feel in here right now? And just like notice what comes up. It's just awareness. It's just simple, like, what does my body feel right now? What do I feel like it's a little bit chaotic in here. Okay. Okay, well, I'll just notice that. How does that feel for me? Okay, I don't really like it that much. Okay, well, I think I'm gonna take my coffee to go. Like, just doing those little low scale things that don't have any big impact, but they do in the sense of they don't have an impact majorly in your 3D life, but they will in your resonance, right, or your frequency, and that you'll expand. But also you're reaffirming to spirit, if you are wanting to open these things up, that like, hey, I'm paying attention. Hey, I'm actively trying to bring my awareness to this greater thing. And even for me too, I used to early before I was in a point in my life where I was having a really hard time discerning what felt right for me. It was like there was one external thing and another thing, and I kept going back and forth between the two. And a teacher at the time had told me about, in order to assess how you feel about something, sit quietly, close your eyes, call to mind something that you know is like a full body yes. Maybe it's like your loved one or your kids or your job or your pet, like something that is like, you know, your body is like, oh, I love them. This is so unaligned. It's a yes for me. Like it's a really positive thing. Notice what you feel in your body when you bring that into your mind. And then do the same thing with something that is a hard no, like something that you know, I never want to do. This is not for me. It's not enough. Like it's just one of those things that you know. Notice how that feels in your body.
Mhm.
And it's going to feel different. One's probably going to feel expansive. Maybe you'll notice your body opens up. Maybe you smile. Oftentimes with no's, we close off, we kind of curl down, we maybe frown. So just notice between those two things. That's just you telling your brain, okay, when this feeling of expansion or lightness or joy or whatever it is in my body, that feels like yes, an alignment, something that feels good. When it is the opposite of whatever sensations you have with a no thing, notice those things because it will show up in very similar ways in your body.
Totally. That's an amazing exercise. Thanks for sharing that, because that takes you from here into here. You know what I mean? That's really cool. Thanks for sharing that. I think that's going to be really useful for people.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Totally. And like you said, that's how you can practice it on the daily in many different ways. And that's also a really good thing that we can even teach kids too when they're trying to learn how to move through their feels, right? Is like, how does your body feel right now? Where do you feel it? That
Totally.
kind of stuff. What do you want to do about it? Yeah. I mean, I had to apply those principles at a hockey game the other day. I had just finished teaching a course. So when I'm done teaching a course, my energy is like, right? So open. And then I had to rush over to the skating rink, and it's a tournament. So we're talking like packed stands. We ended up sitting right by the opposite team too. Like our team was here, and just where the seats were, we were over here. So it was like so much energy of every which way, intensity and everything. And I was sitting there, and my husband's like, "You doing okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm totally fine." I'm like, "Next time I'm not going to teach a course before I come here." And he's like, "What do you need to do?" I'm like, "Just give me a minute." And so I did exactly that. I'm like, "Okay, I'm feeling overwhelmed clearly. What do I need to do about it? Do I want to leave? No, because my son's playing hockey and I want to be here. So what can I do differently now with my body and my frequency, yada yada." So like I think it's a continual practice. I don't think it's something we just like master and we don't have to do anymore. I think we're always having to adjust to the incoming energies and choose what we want to do about it.
Okay, so this is kind of a segue to that. So thank you, because I keep getting this over and over, and I'm like, I don't know where I can fit this in. I don't know. And then, so this is cool, because choosing your energy when you have incoming information. So when we talk about how polarized kind of our Earth is right now, and I'm talking like polarized on all level. Like we have polarization on spiritual levels. We have polarization on like obviously government and blah blah blah, but like on every level you could have, there's polarization right now. Like we have like spiritual teachers against spiritual teachers, right? You see it all the time. So that's why we're talking about like discernment. Some things might resonate, might not. Doesn't mean it's right or wrong. So but anyway, they're really drawing my attention to the perception of how you react to incoming information, and that can really help our daily health, mental health. So here's a practice. When we receive a bunch of information that's really triggering to us, like let's use, for example, if there is a certain group of individuals that are attacking another group of individuals, okay? So we can watch this and it can be really, really gut wrenching and hurtful. And it's like, oh, so I feel like some of us in this whole world of extreme emotions have a tendency to get really emotionally driven by the awful acts of one party to another. So we'll go to like them, like bastards. I can't like I would take them out if I could, and like versus being like all of this group needs so much love energy sent. So what I can do from currently where I'm right now, I can't go over and like take out this whole army, right? Like hate isn't gonna devour hate, and especially you sitting there getting this information. But what really does happen is the energy, like you said, how you can amplify your energy is by creating more of it. And so you're not going to want to create more hate by all the hate thoughts about how much you hate that group because of the awful things they do, right? Like even me saying it right now, I'm like, ugh, so heavy,
Yeah.
right? So when we feel ourselves triggered with something, try and see if we can look at what part of it we can send love. Because then I know that you can send that group that is like going through so much trauma in so many different places in the earth, so much love, so much love. And I'm not talking spiritual light and love, like I'm talking real expansive through my heart space love. And then see if you can do the same to all parties involved. Can you send the people who are coming through with anger and whatever, can you send them love too? Can you send their little 6-year-old self love from where they come from? Like expanding on the love frequency. And I think we talked about this before, but I don't know, they really wanted me to add this in to this on about acting on incoming stimulus, incoming information, how we can directly apply our outgoing frequency. Because with so much information coming in on like a negative or polarizing scale, it can be difficult to really break it down and say how I can direct my energy in my conscious way, in an expansive way. Does this make sense? Did that come through clear?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a big message.
Yeah, and as you were talking, I was getting something kind of on the other side of the coin that we haven't really talked about. It's so one of the things for me this year I've been really trying to, through the polarization, is be able to kind of not be on the spectrum of like right, wrong, yes, no, oh, I'm right, you're wrong, da, 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 da. But like come up from a higher perspective, not a better perspective, but just a different vantage point. How can I see both sides? Because I am very passionate about, you know, activism and things in the world and making change from the privileged place that I sit. And I've had this challenge of like, I'm really against this, but I also see their humanity, but da, 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 and it was really challenging for me. And so I tried to rise up to a different perspective in situations where I was feeling really polarized, to say like, can I see the humanity in both? Because it is there, even if there's one group of people or one situation or one thing where we're like, everything about this is wrong. I don't like it. I don't resonate with it. It feels wrong to me. They're still humans. And a great example of that is this situation with this war, and how you're hearing about Ukrainian people. You would think that they have people attacking them. The mindset would be, oh, they're all bad. Everybody who's attacking me is all bad. And yet there are people as a part of that group that are young, that didn't even know, that it's being reported that they didn't even know they were being sent there, that they're surrendering and they're like, hey, I'm 19, I'm not interested in this. If we didn't have discernment about bad potentially being good, that might have a very different outcome. And people who never chose to be a part of a really awful, terrible situation could get harmed too. And so it's like, how can we use discernment on both sides of the coin? Obviously, we always want to keep ourselves safe and protected as a first, at first glance, right? If there's ever any doubt of your safety, obviously take care of that. But can we see when there's somebody who's not in alignment with us, or somebody that we see that is bad or doing things that we don't agree with? Can we find pieces of their humanity and try to understand that, so that we're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater? I think that's the saying. We're not lumping people in to a group that maybe they aren't actually in. Maybe there's more conversation to be had. Maybe there's more understanding to be had. I think the less we can just polarize in general, the better, right? Because the less polarization, the more conversation, the more being able to understand and maybe coming together on certain things that realistically we might not actually be that far apart on. We're just arguing from two sides of the same spectrum. If we're on the same spectrum, we probably have the same goals.
And that's why oftentimes, again, taking it to the higher level, because I always hang out in spirit, that's why spirit often talks about seeing things from the higher perspective, from the view in the stands, because they can see all the parts, right? Like when we can raise our consciousness to seeing all those parts, we can do like what Lisa said and like consciously choose to send love, consciously choose to see the people's humanity. And like you were saying, consciously choose to find truths and not blanket one thing because of another, right? Like we are given constant opportunity of discernment in resonance throughout our lives. And right now we are in a absolute like compression of opportunity, right? We have opportunity every direction we look at, right? Up, down, sideways, diagonal, it's everywhere. And so when we can remember to try and view it from that higher perspective in certain situations, yes, there's some where like you're literally on the ground in 3D and you have to react in 3D. You don't have time to sit and think, what would I like to do in this moment, right?
And that's if you're like in it,
If you're
right?
in it. But
But
when you
see,
can,
yeah,
going up higher is going to allow you basically to detach
right,
from the gut wrenchingness of it.
right.
And
And all the thoughts,
yeah,
right? Because
yeah,
again, when you bring it up into this level, because we can, with so much information coming in, like we're not there, we're not in it, right? But we are absorbing the information. So, yes, we like to be aware of what's going on. But all of a sudden, the thoughts start coming in, and it's like, oh, but then did you hear about this perspective? And then and their government, and they're coming from this, and then this city is it, and there's the reaction, and then this, and this family, and this, all of a sudden, the thoughts, the thoughts, the thoughts, the thoughts. So when you take, because then that with that comes anxiousness, a
Mm-hmm.
ton of emotions,
mm-hmm,
fear, anger, all of that. So like if you do come up boop, and detach from it and be like, okay, I'm looking from like an outside perspective, what needs to be done in this isn't me to be sitting there getting really angry at how much they're doing in this situation. Obviously we can have emotional feelings on it, but for our perspective and how we want to like increase our expansiveness and in that energy that we want to reside in
mm-hmm,
is to be able to detach from all those thoughts and all of that like gut wrenching feelings, to be able to give the love to the humans, to give the love to the situation, to just be like, what can I do? I'm going to like hold so much space for the love that needs to be received. And you can do that. You
mm-hmm.
can give love.
And that peak spot too is the peak potential for your resonance,
Yeah,
right? Like your frequency is that. And when you can get to that point is when you can really feel what it is you want to do about things, right? So
right.
like tie it back to the beginning of what we were saying, like that's your point of discernment. That's your point of assessing what is true, what aligns, what and when I say true, what is true for you, right? Like what
No.
aligns with your truth,
Mhm.
what doesn't. Um, it's that point. It's that pinnacle of the triangle, the top piece. You have two sides, two opportunities, polarity, whatever it may be. But from here, you can determine
What you want to do about it
what to do. So,
based upon your peak
yeah,
energetic frequency
yeah,
by detaching from all of the da, 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 da. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And then make your choices. I'm
yeah.
not saying not do anything, but you can make
Totally.
your choices from this peak, like you said, that peak performance, that place of this frequency, this highest frequency that you can raise yourself to be, because we are all one. We are
Mm-hmm.
all one.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Lisa, I liked what you said about it's not just about, because there was a lot of conversation about light and love isn't enough, right? And, I think what you said was really on point about holding that space and then making a decision about what you want to do. For some people, that might be holding a big energetic space and sending healing and love and all of those things. And other people, it might be donating money, or it might be doing some sort of activism thing, or it might be having a conversation with your children about something
Totally.
challenging in the world and helping them to understand, like whatever it is, it like you said, it's not to sit back and be like, well, I sent light and love, so all good.
Yeah, and I see a lot of amazing things being done from that place. I see these big prayer groups being held, or
Yeah.
meditation groups, right?
Mhm.
Like to me, I think that's an absolute beautiful use of energy,
Mhm.
right? And if people have the finances to be able to do that, that's another great
Totally.
energetic input
Yeah.
into it. Or drawing attention to this whole situation in the first place from the place of love.
Mhm.
We're all doing the very best we can, but it's really hard when you're in the middle of the chaos and that's what you see it from, right? And so like your true discernment, your true intuitive knowing will come from that place, right? Getting yourself into that place, not like on the ground with all the files and the thoughts going through, right? Because then we lose touch of our undercurrent.
Mhm.
Way to bring it all back together, ladies.
Way to tie it up. Well, I think that's really quite lovely for today. Truly, it's
Yeah.
been whirling around in a lot of minds and hearts of a lot of people. There's lots of incoming energy information that we need to wade through. So it's really about just wading through it with consciousness, conscious choice. Um, and that helps you with discernment. So I think that's lovely. All right. Well, ladies, thank you for this morning. Thank you to all of you who've been watching. If you haven't yet already, do subscribe, share it with someone. And as well, if you guys are looking to deepen your practice in expanding consciousness of many different ways, we are all on Avalon Spirit. Plus, there are many more personal journey guides, some of which we are going to have on the show here soon too. So we can dive into more concepts with them. And if you also haven't already and you want to connect with us, a great place to do that is the Avalon Spirit Facebook group. We are all on there. Lots of conversation happens there on the daily, so check that out as well. So thank you guys so much, and we will see you next week.
Bye.